first of all, you're more than welcome to take pictures. I don't know how well they're going to come out. If you contact either Representative Workman or my office tomorrow, we will be more than willing to get you a copy of these slides. So like I said, go ahead and take these pictures, but if you want a copy, you can have that first thing tomorrow morning. Certainly want to give you guys access to that stuff. And for our next one, if you call us up a day ahead, we'll be more than willing to send it out so you can be ready. We don't want to hide anything or anything like that. But I do want to touch on one quick thing that you probably read in the newspaper. I think that would have been maybe Matt Reed article about citizens with $5 billion that don't need to deal with race or anything because Citizens has $5 billion. First of all, the Florida Today was correct. Citizens does have about $5 billion in the bank, and why would they need to have any type of rate increase if they have billions of dollars in the bank? Well, the problem is if Citizens was any private carrier, it would immediately and absolutely be shut down. In fact, charges probably would be brought against Citizens because what happens is Citizens has $5 billion in the bank, but over $400 billion in liabilities. So if a hurricane comes through, and let's say which isn't unreasonable, 1 in 25 will do this, knocks out 10% of liable coverage, there's $40 billion. So we have $5 billion to cover $40 billion in claims. The question is, where does that other $35 billion come from? Look to your right, look to your left, that's where it comes from. So the question becomes, how does State Farm do this? Because State Farm doesn't have $200 billion in the bank. It's very simple. There's a process out there called reinsurance. And what State Farm or any insurance company will do, this is the great thing about reinsurance, is it's a world market. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett is one of the biggest ones. They go out and they buy insurance for 1 out of every 1 in 25, 1 in 50, and 1 in 100, and they have compounded reinsurance on top of that. So they're ready if a couple blow through. The state of Florida with Citizens is not. To give you an idea, if the state of Florida was to buy reinsurance the same way to cover their liabilities, it would cost about $3 billion a year. Well, Citizens has been out and they've collected this $5 billion over 4 or 5 years. If they were to be a viable private market, they would have had to have been paying $3 billion in reinsurance each and every year. So the reality of the situation, they really shouldn't have $5 billion in the bank. They should have about negative $10 billion because they haven't been paying for reinsurance. Why haven't they been paying for reinsurance? Because the citizens of the state of Florida are the reinsurance for Citizens. So when we look to make Citizens actuarially sound, we have to find out how much it would actually cost to pay for this reinsurance if these hurricanes blow through, so we wouldn't have to rely on the citizens of the state of Florida. So when you see things like that, pick up the phone, call Rich or I, because that sounded really terrible that Citizens had $5 billion in the bank, and there's a really good explanation why they have that and why they probably need to be raising rates or certainly entering the reinsurance market one way or the other.
Education reform, rewarding good teachers based on objective criteria, not time served. I think many of you heard that we passed a merit pay structure this year. It takes effect over the next few years. It actually is part of Obama's Race to the Top program. In order to receive more dollars in the state of Florida for education, you have to meet these criteria of Race to the Top. One of them is the merit pay system. We've tried it in the past in Florida, and we failed miserably, because one thing about rewarding good teachers is, especially in this particular county, kudos superintendent, you have to be able to pay them when they do meet these higher criteria. And 10 years ago when they tried merit pay, they didn't fund it, and it turned into a laughingstock joke. This time we're going to get it right, and I think that the non-Senate Bill 6 that passed this year will serve us well as we begin to reward teachers for doing good works while not rewarding those that do not. Charter schools, we expand charter schools, reward high-performing schools with longer renewal terms, easier to get vouchers, all things that I'm sure Brian wants to hear. So next slide, please.
Medicaid reform Medicaid is the largest portion of our budget. Our total budget, Medicaid is A, the biggest, and B, the fastest growing. So in other words, we wanted to get a handle on this, and the way we did is instead of going for pay for fee, we've gone into a managed care system. This is an extremely tight wire rope between patient care as well as physicians that have entered into a business and have a business model set up. And not to get overly complicated, but we've tried to put the citizens in the state of Florida in groups more than individual care that they would get from a specific doctor that they would get one way or the other. That being said, there was a great outcry that I did not know about, and I don't think the governor knew about, with folks with developmental disabilities. And they were exempted out of the program with a strong outcry up in Tallahassee.
Gun legislation, open carry. I think many of you heard about this. It is still not legal in this state to carry a gun in a holster on your hip. However, what the bill does do is that if you accidentally expose your concealed weapon while you have a concealed weapons permit, you're not going to get a felony slapped against you. Privacy may not record firearm ownership in medical records, prohibits harassment of patients. Insurance may not discriminate or increase premiums. This was an interesting bill. It started off a bit cuckoo, ended up logical. Apparently it was becoming, everyone has an agenda. Many of you in the room today have an agenda. So do some doctors and some insurance company or insurance agents, representatives. And they would ask you, maybe your new mom or new mom and dad, and they'll say, in the disguise of child safety, they ask you, do you have a gun in the home? You answer yes, they make a little note, gun at home. As a gun-toting, Second Amendment right guy, it's none of your business if I got in the home. And so we didn't eliminate the ability for them to ask the question, we eliminated the ability for them to write it down. So kind of got watered down, but it's an interesting thing, and we brought it up because it did make the press, and you may have a question there, or if you want to bring one up, that's good. Next slide, James.
Court reform, one of the speaker's priority was to expedite cases through our court system. And he looked, as many times he's done before, at the model of Governor Perry in the state of Texas. And this was to split the Supreme Court between a criminal and a civil branch. Let me go back. The Speaker can, or and the House cannot do that. We would have to put it on the ballot, and we would have to let the voters decide. But that was one of his priorities. It turns out it was not one of the Senate's priorities. So this one, too, got changed quite a bit. And the way that we choose judges is pretty complicated. The governor selects a group of folks. That's the JNC or the JQC, Judicial Nominating Committee or Judicial Qualifying Committee, and then they make recommendations to the governor, and then the governor selects from those 3 or 4 people. And the way it works is that if the governor doesn't like any of those people, he just doesn't select, and he lets them send it over again. So what this does is this provides the House and the Senate with access to the JQC records to open the process up as much as humanly possible. There is a little bit in there that needs to remain confidential for privacy reasons of previous cases, but this was to open that system up as much as possible. That will not be, by the way, that will not be on the splitting of the Supreme Court between a civil and a criminal division will not be happening.
They will require Senate confirmation of it. So yes. I just mark it all that way. Red lights made some press this year. We did not repeal the red light bill. When I say we are a bicameral House and Senate. The House repealed the red light camera law. The Senate chose to water it down and send it back, and this is what ended up passing. Universal timing standards to prevent some local governments from creating dangerous situations with timing designed to maximize fine at the expense of safety. So that's illegal now. That seems like a law that didn't need to be there. Bill to ban red light cameras died in the Senate. There's a lot of controversy with red light cameras. We may talk about it, maybe it's hard to hear. There was a big push, at least in the House, to repeal that law. Let me be clear, we talked about this at last town hall, many of you were there. The law that the legislature passed last year that I voted against, John voted against,
No, I actually voted for it.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
There were two bills, and I was a co-sponsor on both. The first bill was to do away with red light cameras. That one died almost initially. The second bill was to limit how much cities and counties could charge. Some cities and counties down south were charging $300 for these red light tickets. So this uniformly set it at $153 or $158 and decided where the money would go. So I decided that I didn't like red cameras, but darn it, if they were going to happen, I wanted to make sure that that was equitably treated. And the perception was a little bit different either way.
Let's be clear, that bill that we're talking about from 2010 did not make red light cameras legal. They were legal before that bill passed in 2010. 26 different municipalities had red light cameras. As John said, Orlando had several, down south had several. The problem was, well, what we did authorize is them to put it on a state road. Makes a big difference. It's not just city to city, now it's, or county to county, or county to city. Now they have permission to put them on state roads. So that expanded it on one hand, and on the other hand, it limited how much money they could make off them, and it also prohibited commissions being paid to the red light camera companies, which is how they usually do business in most of the states. They do business by commission. They say, hey, for every ticket we write, we get $10. Well, that's ridiculous. So in Florida, they have to sign a contract, but it's a yearly contract, so there's a shell game there. I would love to have seen that repealed altogether, and the repealer that we did pass in the House actually preempted red light cameras so that they can go back to where they were before, which was they were legal, just unregulated by the state. So I wish the Senate had held strong. They didn't. They gave us this little yellow thing, so that's great.
I think we're on the same. We're both not fans of the red light camera. There's a lot of talk. We won't go over the research too much, but what you need to understand is 85% of red light tickets are right on red, rolling it. Okay? These are not the T accidents that you see. That takes place less than 15% of the time. And I've given you my disclosure that I'm against red lights. I will also tell you that slightly more accidents happen. Okay? And I will tell you that those are, you know, you'll see the rear end ones actually increase with red lights because people, it's yellow, I don't know, I got to step on the brake real quickly and they're hit from behind. So the states that have had these red light cameras, Arizona's had them for quite some time, and there is research out there that points out that in intersections in which you put red lights, accidents actually decrease. On the other hand, the T accidents decrease, but the total number of accidents actually increase.
Increase because of the rear ending. Because the guy realizes he's going to get a ticket, slams on the brake, the guy hits him behind him. T-bones decrease while bumper to bumper increase. Anyway, enough on that. If you have questions, fill out a card. It's been fun. Listen, all right, this is important now because you probably didn't come here to plan on talking about this, but I want to give you something. This is now the redistricting year. We all know, many of you supported that Amendments 5 and 6 passed. There are going to be fair districts. For the first time in Florida history, we're going to draw them on county and city boundaries. We're not going to favor encumbrance. All these good things that came out of 5 and 6. And you, my friends that came to the Satellite Beach Town Hall meeting, are going to participate in that redistricting process. First way you can do that is you can attend public meetings. The Central Florida ones will be between July 25th and 28th. I know that's broad and you don't know when or where, but they're not released yet. But the minute they're released, I will Twitter them, I will post them on my Facebook, I will have them ready at my office. If you give me your email address, I will send it to you. You need to go to those. You need to have a